Okay, so we're back with the next Lilo and Stitch video. I've got the my Stitches and my Angel over here. The shirts will be back for the third video because I actually just got another Lilo and Stitch shirt. It's another shirt that's it's a Stitch version of like those princess silhouette shirts that I have, or like the Disney silhouette shirts that I have. It's a Stitch version of that, and I'll wear that one for the final video. Um, this video is going to be about the two of the movies that they did for Lilo and Stitch, kind of the sequel movies that go with the franchise. So this one is going to be about Lilo and Stitch 2, Stitch Has a Glitch, which came out in 2005, and then Stitch the movie, which I think came out in 2003. And actually, in the timeline of the actual Stitch universe, Lilo and Stitch universe, Stitch Has a Glitch actually happens first, and then it's Stitch the movie. So in that case, let's start with Stitch Has a Glitch. Stitch Has a Glitch, as I said, came out in 2005. The concept of the movie is it takes place probably a couple of months or a couple of weeks or so after the end of the original one. The movie starts with Stitch starts having different nightmares, and he starts having destructive tendencies. And well, including like he dreams about like hurting Lilo and causing problems on Earth and everything like that, and it very much scares Stitch. Lilo, of course, tries to comfort him and tells him that I know that you would never cause me harm or cause Nani harm or Jumba and Pleakley or anything like that. You wouldn't do that, because that's not who you are. And what ends up happening is it's supposed to be like Stitch is supposed to have this kind of debut of joining, becoming, well, no, is that one in this one, or is this, no, that's in the other Lilo and Stitch one. But Stitch and Lilo go to Hula class, because Lilo of course still goes to Hula class with the other girls, and with Myrtle and all the other girls, and Myrtle's clique and their teacher Kumu. And they go there, and Lilo and Stitch have a hovercraft because Jumba made them a hovercraft, which I just find adorable. And they go there, and Kumu announces that there is going to be a performance for the local May Day festival. I have not the best recollections of May Day because at the high school that I went to here in Nebraska, they had May Day royalty at the high school, and I always looked at that as stupid. And if they just like announced it over the loudspeaker or just had like a dance at the end of the on May Day or whatever, I would have been fine with it. But they had an assembly at school, and we were kind of required to be there. And like if you're it's like if you're friends with the people that's there, or the family members, or whatever, the people who are the May Day royalty or whatever, the May Day court at the high school, then that's fine. But if you're not, and if you have no idea who these people are, for the most part, me not knowing nor caring who these people are, I didn't want to be there. And for the first 2 years of high school, I had to be there. And then I had a focus program that I went to instead. And I could, not have to worry about the auditorium, not have to go to the assemblies, and not get in trouble for it. But I never cared for any of that stuff in school. But back to the Lilo and Stitch thing. They're going to have a May Day festival, and each student is required to create an original dance that they want to do. And what ends up happening is, so many of the other girls are like talking about what they want to do their dance about and everything. And Kumu shows Lilo this picture of her mother from when her mother was a kid. And the mother basically looks like Lilo. I mean, like, her and Nani look like their mom, and their mom looks like them, type of thing. But he showed Lilo this picture of her mother, and he gave it to her and said that her mother had won the festival, won the award at the dance festival, when she was Lilo's age. And this gives Lilo some inspiration, and Lilo decides to kind of try to take some inspiration from that. Myrtle then insults Lilo by telling her that she will never be like her mother, and this causes Lilo to attack Myrtle. And then Stitch takes a picture because Stitch. Um, I'm like, yeah, I never quite had the same level of that with someone in like the way that like Lilo and Myrtle has, because like they never said that I would, they never insulted my mother or they never did anything like that I remember. But yeah, no, I would perfectly understand why Lilo acts that way. Um, but what ended up happening is they go back, and Lilo kind of gets in trouble a little bit, and thinks that maybe, and Kumu thinks that Lilo's maybe not quite ready, um to be part of the performance, because she keeps fighting with Myrtle, and like Lilo promises that she won't do it again, that she'll be good and everything. And then in regards to the competition, Lilo goes home, and like they talk to Nani and tries to get ideas from Nani and everything. And Lilo and Stitch are trying very hard to come up with ideas, and Nani's encouraging them and trying to, they have family night, and unfortunately, during family night, they have like Jumbo and Plickly there, and Nani and David are there, and they're watching a horror movie because Lilo loves horror movies, and Jumbo would like horror movies too because he's a mad scientist. And Pleakley likes the horror movies because it comes to teach him about, Earth. I'm like, yeah, horror movies are not the best way to teach aliens about Earth, particularly when the horror movie happens to be about aliens. Um, um, but they're watching the movie, and Stitch, unfortunately, goes berserk in the house, and he causes some damage in the house and everything. And Jumbo starts to get very worried, and he explains to Pleakley, because he runs off to like because he still has like the spaceship that he kind of rebuilt after it kind of crashed and got it working again, and he runs back there, and he has like a science lab set up in there, and Pleakley runs back there with him, and Jumbo explains to Pleakley that when he had first created Stitch, all of he had to fully charge Stitch. And what it ended up happening is he has to like fully charge Stitch's molecules to keep him stable. And what ends up happening is when Jumbo was arrested, prior to where we see him on trial in the first movie, when he's arrested, the charging process got interrupted, and therefore Stitch was not fully charged. And this glitch now is causing Stitch to like revert back. This glitch in Stitch is now, of course, causing him to kind of revert back to his destructive programming, his destructive tendencies, what Jumbo had originally programmed him to do, which Jumbo doesn't want him to do anymore, of course, because he sees how happy Stitch is with Lilo and with Nani and with the family and everything. And Jumbo is happy there as well. I mean, Jumbo would probably be perfectly fine with wanting to go back to space and his mad sciencing and everything. But he's happy here on Earth too, and so is Pleakley. But what ends up happening is Jumbo starts trying to come up with a plan, and he also tells Pleakley that if ultimately Stitch will be destroyed because he will die if he does not make it's called a fusion chamber that will be able to finish re-energizing Stitch and make his molecules stable. I will be talking a little bit about, because this video will also talk about, as I said, it will talk about Lilo and Stitch 2, which is where Stitch the movie, which is kind of the third one in the series, where we learn more about like Stitch and all the other experiments. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But in this one, we don't know, by technicality in the timeline of the story, Lilo and the rest of the family don't know about all 625 other experiments. But like, so Jumbo starts trying to work on trying to make a fusion chamber, so that way he can make it, and such, so that way he can make it so that way Stitch won't be destroyed, because he does care about Stitch. And what ends up happening is, during this whole time, Stitch starts, continually starts having destructive tendencies, but throughout the course of this as well, he's also trying to help Lilo with coming up with inspiration for her dance, for the hula dance, and for the competition. And what they end up doing is they decide to visit all these different places around the island where Elvis has gone to, because, of course, Lilo adores Elvis and she thinks he's amazing and everything. And so they go to all these different places where, like, oh, Elvis ate at this restaurant once, so we're gonna go here. Elvis went to this laundromat, and they start dancing around the laundromat, which is adorable. Or like Elvis sat on this bench, so we're gonna go here, because he filmed several films in Hawaii and everything, and several on the island, or at least one or two on the island where Lilo and Stitch live. So they go and visit those different places and everything, and Lilo starts to notice this new behavior in Stitch, and it starts to worry her, and she decides, in the first movie we saw that Lilo made like the goodness level chart. This is you, this is your badness level. It's unusually high for someone your size, and it starts, Stitch starts having more and more destructive tendencies, unfortunately. And what ends up happening is she starts to believe that this is him, thinks that she's neglecting him, so he's acting out. Which she's not neglecting him, and Stitch just can't control it, but he can't explain to her what's going on, because Stitch himself doesn't understand what's going on with his programming, with his body, because it just keeps happening. And so eventually, the two decide that they are going to do a dance based off of the legend of Hayaka. Again, I apologize to anyone from Hawaii that has watched these videos. If I mispronounce these words, I apologize. It is not my intention. The little bit that I understand about this legend that Lilo explains a bit in the show or in the movie is that this was a goddess, or that there was a goddess who became friends with a mortal, and the mortal died, and she wanted to bring him back, so she did a dance to show how much she cared about the mortal, and it brought him back to life. The gods resurrected him. Gee, that sounds a bit like a story in a nutshell for this, in regards to what happens to Stitch. But if I got that legend wrong, again, I apologize to anyone from Hawaii or that studies Hawaiian mythology. If that's the case, I apologize if I got that wrong. That's just what I remember, because it's been a while since I've watched some of the movies. I did rewatch Lilo and Stitch, but I did not rewatch Stitch Has a Glitch or the other ones for this at the moment. So they start to work on that, and they start doing different practice sessions, but Stitch unfortunately ends up ruins the practice sessions, and kind of rips up the costume at various points in time, and it's just very hard, and it hurts Lilo. And Stitch, and Jumbo watches this, and he sees that Stitch is becoming worse and worse with the tendencies and everything, and he mail order cataloged a fusion reactor, generator, chamber, or whatever it's called, and it doesn't work. So then Pleakley has to give Jumbo a motivational speech to get Jumbo to build his own, which I just find hilarious. And so Jumbo works on, and Pleakley helps him, but Jumbo works on making his own fusion chamber. And what ends up happening is, I think at some point in the movie, David and Nani had a little bit of a fight. Because they were dating, and then there ended up being some form of a fight or something, and then I don't remember if they broke up or whatever, but it's they're kind of not on the best of terms at the time. But David, of course, is still very supportive of Lilo. Again, out of so many of the Disney prince or heroine or male love interest characters, David is definitely up there. David from Lilo and Stitch is definitely up there as a role model, minus the fire dancing and fire eating that he does, minus that. But Stitch ended up Stitch and Lilo kind of have a bit of a fight. And Stitch does try to show that his goodness level is getting better, because he goes around and he tries doing all these nice things for people that kind of result in him kind of causing trouble, but it's, it's like comes from a good spot, but it doesn't always work out so well. And, Jumba and quickly complete the fusion chamber, and, unfortunately, um, you know, Stitch has another fit, and this confuses Lilo, and he tries to explain to her that it's not, it's not him that's doing it, it's something inside of him that's making him do it. He can't control it. And he actually ends up hurting Lilo. I don't remember if I think it's he just like scratches her arm or something. He hurts her, but I don't remember if he just scratched her arm, because I don't think he scratched her face. I think it's just her arm that he scratches. And, he would never intentionally hurt her. And Lilo knows this, so she knows something is wrong because, oh no, he does. He scratches her face. That's what it is. I couldn't remember if it was her arm or her face, but he scratches her and it's her face. And, so she knows that Stitch would never intentionally hurt her, or Nani, or Jumba, or Pleakley, or David, or any of those people that they care about. And I would guess I could throw Cobra Bubbles in there as well, but he doesn't show up in this movie. And this happens just before the performance, and, the rest of the girls do their performances or whatever, and then when it's Lilo's turn, she's not there. David and Nani were there waiting, because David's still going to show up because he still cares about Lilo, and Jumba and Pleakley are racing there, and what ends up happening is, Lilo realizes that something's wrong with Stitch, and he believes that, Stitch is like, he has to leave Earth because, he's too dangerous. And in the middle of the performance, Lilo runs off after him to help him. And what ends up happening is Stitch gets to one of the spaceships that they have, because they have multiple spaceships, I guess, besides the one that Jumba and Pleakley have. They get there, and Stitch gets there, and he's attempting to try to leave Earth. And Jumba and Pleakley are trying to catch up with them and everything, and Nani and David are there. And what ends up happening is, while taking off, Stitch has another outburst, which causes him to then crash the spaceship into the Hawaiian Mountains, and Lilo and the others are following to the crash site to get there to help him in her hovercraft. Well, Lilo's riding in the hovercraft. The others, I think, are chasing after her as well. And they get there, and, like, Jumba has the fusion chamber that he built, and, we get this touching moment between Jumba and Stitch. And we don't get too many touching moments between Jumba and Stitch. We don't really get any in the first movie, except like maybe right at the end. When, like, Jumba does, of course, decide to stay. Well, he's, like, banished to Earth, as is Pleakley. Which, in regards to the Galactic Federation not wanting, Earth to find out about aliens, the fact that they leave Jumba and Pleakley and Stitch on the planet implies that, I don't know, maybe you need to well, I mean, I understand Stitch being left there, but, like, Jumba and Pleakley, I'm like, okay, you couldn't have taken them back with you or whatever. I mean, Jumba's a fugitive, so technically he should be arrested. Technically, Pleakley didn't break any laws, I guess, but I don't know. But what ends up happening is, they get there, and, like, we get this touching moment between Jumba and Stitch, and, like, he's holding Stitch, not Stitch's, it's not Stitch's lifeless body, it's his injured body. And, he hugs Stitch, and then he puts Stitch into the chamber, and, like, he's explained to Lilo and the others that, Stitch, that it's a problem with, Stitch, and this chamber is hopefully going to fix it, and they put him into the chamber. And, but it's too late, and, Stitch was close to death when they put him in the chamber, and then, however, it takes, it's too late, and, Lilo watches with tears as Stitch dies. And, they take him out of the chamber, and, like, Lilo is just clinging to him. And, yeah, she's clinging to him. And she's just kept saying that that he needed her and needed her and needed her more and more and more. And, she just, she didn't quite get that and everything at the time. She just thought that he was causing problems to cause problems, but it wasn't. And so she's like, sorry. And that therefore, they're Ohana, and that they will always be with each other. And the rest of them are standing around there. Jumba and Pleakley are there, and I'm pretty sure Pleakley's crying. Jumba might be attempting not to cry. Nani and David are there. And very much like the legend of, that Lilo was going to do the dance about, Stitch is revived from the sincere love from his family. And Stitch wakes up and he's okay, and Lilo is so happy, and all the rest of them are so happy. And then the family, along with David, then perform Lilo's hula dance to an empty stage because everybody left and the competition's over. Um, and Nani then tells Lilo that yes, Mom would have been very proud of you. And we get like this star twinkling in the sky, which is adorable. But also throughout the movie, one of the things is we see the picture of Lilo and Nani's mom, and she has this, one of the pretty Hawaiian flowers in her hair, and Stitch keeps, putting the flowers in Lilo's hair to kind of, keep her happy, and it's like, yes, you look like your mom. I will put flower in your hair. Pretty much, I think they got most of the voice cast back for all of the characters. Except Lilo. They actually had a Dakota Fanning voice Lilo in this one instead of the original girl that voiced Lilo. But I think pretty much everybody else came back to voice all the different characters from the original movie. The songs that they had in it were I Need Your Love Tonight by Elvis Presley. Rubberneckin' by Elvis Presley. A Little Less Conversation by Elvis Presley, but it's a Junkie LX remix or XL remix. Always, which appears to be a Hawaiian variation of something. Hawaiian Roller Coaster Ride, which was in the first movie, and then Hey. And then there's another Hawaiian one. Hey, Makana Ke Aloha, a gift of love, as well. And on the Stitch Has a Glitch DVD, there was also a little short that you could watch that is called The Origin of Stitch. And what happens is Stitch is kind of wandering through the forest, probably like, well, Lilo's at school or something. And because Stitch does not go to school with Lilo. But he goes and he finds his way to the spaceship, and he finds his way to Jumba's secret computer. And it reveals that Jumba has created not just Stitch, but 625 other experiments. And Stitch is scared to find this out, and he's just worried and everything. And he sees, because it was like, the computer scans him to verify that he's 626, and it shows the different creature pieces that he was kind of made from. So there's a these are just funny names, and I'm pretty sure they had fun making up. There's a fearsome mangaloid of Oopmoridion 4, a goo gobbling booger beast, a people eating pus monkey, which just sounds disgusting, a deadly Dysum bowler, a boiling tongue Boyd, and a bottom-feeding scum sucker. And it's like bits and pieces of these creatures were used to make Stitch. And like Stitch is watching this, like seeing all these fearsome creatures that were used to make him. And he's just like really scared. And then Jumba comes in, and Jumba just comes in, and he's like, oh no, Stitch. And like they sit and they have tea inside of Jumba's like secret computer lab. And they sit and have tea, and Jumba's just like, oh no. That was what I wanted you to be. It didn't work out because you found Lilo, and you found love, and, because of Lilo, and because of, the family here, their Ohana and everything. But yes, there are 625 other experiments, and they are currently locked away. In the little short, we get like flashes of like a bunch of the other experiments that would then be in the series. But so we get like flashes of that and everything. It's not a very long thing. It's just a little short that they made for it. That's very cutely done. Just this little moment thing that they do between Jumba and Stitch, which I like. Not too much else with that. Then we talk about Stitch the movie, which came out in 2003. Um, um, and the movie takes place. The movie kind of starts with we get to see Gantu again. He is no longer a captain in the Galactic Armada, and he has a new spaceship. His original was destroyed, of course, in the first film, and he is hired by Dr. Jacques von Hamsterville. Hamsterwheel, and he's hired by him. Dr. Jacques von Hamsterville was Jumba's business partner in regards to designing all of the experiments. He was kind of where a lot of the funding came from for all 626 experiments. And so he's kind of the mad scientist, also an evil villain type thing. He's also a hamster. He's an alien hamster. Just adorable. And he always gets angry when people call him Hamster Wheel. And I'm pretty sure Lilo does it just to annoy him. But he's hired Jumba, or not Jumba, he's hired Gantu to go to Earth and retrieve the other 625 experiments. So that way Hamsterville can then use them to cause chaos or sell them or whatever the case may be. Hamsterville was supposed to be in prison. And then what happens is on Earth, Stitch is still not quite fitting in, and he causes another disaster on the beach. He was supposed to be it was supposed to be him kind of not being welcomed in by everybody, but it was just, just family trip to the beach type of thing, which you live in Hawaii. You live in Hawaii. You live very close to the beach. God, if I lived in Hawaii, that would be great. But the thing is if you grow up there, I mean, it's still a beautiful place to live. There's no denying that. But it would just be a bit different of a concept than someone coming to live there or to stay there. But what ends up happening is, Lilo encourages Stitch that he's, one of a kind. And compares him to Frankenstein, which by technicality should be comparing him to Frankenstein's monster, not Frankenstein. Jumbo would be Frankenstein. But she compares him to Frankenstein, which is probably not the best thing, but, he's unique. He's one of a kind. And this makes Stitch feel worse. Because, he's kind of aware of who Frankenstein is, because I'm pretty sure him and Lilo, he's probably read the book or watched one of the movies with Lilo. Although if she showed Stitch young Frankenstein, the Mel Brooks movie, that would have been funny. But given a lot of the swearing in that movie, I don't know if Nani would have permitted that. Horror is one thing, I'm guessing, for Nani. Other thing, that type of stuff, maybe not so much. But suddenly there's a crash that is heard, and they're up in their room, and then they run downstairs, and they see Gantu has arrived, and he is trying to break into their house and causing chaos and everything. And what ends up happening is, they end up, he catches Stitch in a net, because Gantu's kind of prepared this time, and then he also tries to take this blue orb pod type thing that has all the other 625 experiments in it. And he tries to take that and tries to take Jumba. He does take Jumba, and he does manage to take one of the pods, because one of the little pods that looks like little marbles pops out. And he takes that one, and he connects Jumba, and they go back. Pleakley, I don't remember if this is in this episode or if this is in the movie or if this is in one of the episodes. No, it is in this one. It is in this one, because what Pleakley ends up doing is, because Lilo and Stitch, because Lilo gets Stitch out of the net, and they manage to escape, and they're trying to get to Jumba's ship. And what happens is, Pleakley for some reason has a galaxy or universe wide phone book, and he starts like trying to dial every single number in it to try to find Jumba. It starts with A, and like he just works his way through the book, and I'm just like, oh god, please stop. Um, but they get in the Jumba ship to chase Gantu, and engage him in battle before being defeated and falling back towards Earth. Back at the house, as I said, Pleakley is trying to find Jumba, and what ends up happening is Lilo and Stitch find the container. Well, if I remember correctly, before that, when Jumba figured out that Gantu was there trying to get him, he put Pleakley inside of a chest with the container with all the experiment pods in it and locked him in the chest. And then now Lilo and Stitch are there and they're getting him out, and like Pleakley is like has this container and he's like, I don't know what it is, but Jumba had me hide it. And they start doing that, and what ends up happening is they look through it and they want to find a experiment that can recharge the spaceship. They figure, oh, this is where there's 625 other experiments, and they start looking through them and everything. It's like, oh, so we need an experiment that we can use to recharge the spaceship so that way we can then fly. Because Stitch can hotwire stuff, of course, but he can't charge it. So they pull out experiment number 221, and because the concept of the experiments is that they're all dehydrated inside of the orbs, inside of little marble things, the pods. And when they add water to them, even a little bit of water gets on them, they activate. And that, they're in there for storage purposes, and they're kind of like asleep, I would assume. And so they do that, and they, wake up one of them, this yellow one, and it pops out, and it's an electricity one. And because they all have the destructive programming in them, it starts running amok and starts jumping all over the place and jumps out of their house and starts causing like blackouts and power shortages and power surges and everything all over the town. While this is happening with Lilo and Stitch, Gantu takes Jumba back to Hamsterville's ship, and gerbil pod rabbit-like alien is what Hamsterville is just weird, and he has like a giant hamster wheel in his ship, if I remember correctly. Or they make that joke at some point, but I don't remember when. And he tries to intimidate Jumba into telling him where all the other experiments are and everything. And he ends up activating the experiment pod for number 625. And Jumba acts like extremely scared, and he says like, not 625. He has all the same powers as 626. And he activates, Jumba and Gantu and Hamsterville activate it, and then they run out of the cell, so that way it'll only attack Jumba. And then they go back inside, and it's just like it's sitting there on like this giant tower of books that Hamsterville was using to talk to him, and it just made a ton of sandwiches. And Jumba then explains, well, fortunately for me, 625 has all of Stitch's powers, but is incredibly lazy and a terrible coward, and prioritizes in making sandwiches over all else. I love 625. He is so fun. He's so fun throughout the entire animated series and the rest of the series. I love him. He's great. He's a great foil for Gantu. And that's just meanwhile, because Pleakley is working his way through the phone book, he ends up calling Hamsterville's spaceship, which makes no sense, because is he just like dialing numbers at random? But he calls the ship, and then Hamsterville tells Pleakley that he wants to ransom the other 624 experiments for Jumba. Pleakley then informs the family of this, and then Cobra Bubbles shows up. And then Lilo and Stitch, because they want to get, the other, they need to get the other experiment back so they can give them all back to Jumba, or give them to Gantu to get Jumba back. They go looking for 221. And they end up catching it, and it's an electrical one, as I said, and they end up catching it instead of like a giant glass face. Because glass, if I remember correctly, is does not conduct electricity well. if I remember correctly. So they trap him in that, and they end up, they take it back to the house, and Pleakley and Cobra are working on, okay, so, you're going to take the experiments there, we're going to do this and everything. But what ends up happening is Stitch does not want to give, you heard the dog in the background. What happens is Stitch does not want to give back 221, and he tells Lilo, it's like, he's cousin, he's Ohana. And Lilo decides to go with it, and they nickname him Sparky. They nickname him Sparky, which is adorable. And that Sparky is part of Stitch and her Ohana. And they show up at at this lighthouse that is kind of out of commission. And they show up there, and that's where the trade-off is going to be. And they have like the galactic armada there to help and everything. Or like they're waiting to then attack Hamsterville because they want to capture Hamsterville. And what ends up happening is the Sparky ends up helping them. He, short circuits Hamsterville's ship, and they're able to get Jumba back along with all the experiment pods at one point. But what ends up happening is all the experiment pods, a ton of them get knocked out of the container where they're compressed in, and they like rain down over the island, which is not good because Hawaii is in the middle of the ocean and there's a lot of water around, and it rains them down all over the island. And Jumba and Pleakley and Cobra and Hamsterville are all trying to persuade, all trying to work, not work together, but they end up it doesn't end up working out well for Hamsterville. If I remember correctly, Sparky uses his ability because he sees kind of what Ohana is seeing, like Lilo and Stitch, with like Stitch freeing him, and then Sparky decides to help them, as I said. And they're able to get the container back, and they're able to free Jumba, and then the experiments then kind of rain down all over the island. And Hamsterville decided he was just going to try to capture Stitch and then try to clone Stitch 1,000 times. And Lilo gets in trouble, and Stitch has to save Lilo. Then there's like all this other stuff that happens, and like 625 is like in the background, just like making sandwiches the entire time and making jokes the entire time. But they end up capturing Hamsterville. I don't remember if Gantu escapes, but they do capture Hamsterville. And then Sparky ends up, they end up deciding that they are going to save all of the other experiments that fell. And by doing so, they are going to try to find their one true place, because Stitch's one true place is with Lilo. And Sparky's one true place is at the lighthouse. And he can keep the lighthouse going and everything. And what ends up happening is they end up, we see, kind of cut to things referenced in the series where all the other experiments kind of start activating. Oh, they found the water. Oh, they found someone's drink. Oh, they fell into a pool. Oh, they fell into, whatever. Or they got water on them from someone like watering their lawn or whatever. And they start activating. And, thus leading into the series. Which is, where, Lilo and Stitch, the series, comes into play, which will be talked about in a different video. Because I'm milking this one for 3 videos because I can. I love Lilo and Stitch. But, so they do that, and, like, Jumba and Pleakley, of course, are still staying on Earth. And, Jumba makes the comment of making experiment 627. No. Bad Jumba. Bad Jumba. And, so that does lead into the series, where then, of course, I'll talk about the series in the next video for the Disney stuff. But, Jumba and Pleakley kind of wanted to try to escape on the Grand Councilwoman's ship again. That didn't happen. So they're still stranded on Earth again. This one does have, I think, most of the voice cast from the original one. They did have, because this was recorded, the movie was made almost right after the original one was done, because then they wanted to set up like all the other, get the series going. So they do have the same girl that played Lilo play her in this, as opposed to in Stitch Has a Glitch, where she's played by Dakota Fanning. Pretty much all the other ones are there. The only additions to it are they had Jeff Bennett voices Dr. Junk von Hamsterviel. He's just one of the other voice actors that's been in so many different things in regards to like American cartoons. Pretty sure he was in Animaniacs at some point and been in so many other ones. The other one is we have, Frank Welker voices Sparky, and as I've mentioned with Frank Welker before, he's voiced a ton of different characters for Disney movies that are like the animals on the side, like he's a Boo and, in Aladdin, and he's, I think he's Ka the horse in Mulan, and he's, so many of these other Disney animals from like the last 20, 30, 40 years. And he does, other, other animated. He does other animated animal voices, of course. And I was trying to remember, if I remember correctly, I think he also, for a long time, was the voice of Fred from Scooby-Doo. I think that's correct. I think he's the one that voiced Fred in Scooby-Doo, since like the beginning was Scooby-Doo. The other addition to the cast, which then is a prolonged addition to the cast, is Rob Paulsen, who voices Experiment 625. And Rob Paulsen is kind of famous for the 3 Animaniacs roles that he plays. He plays Yakko, he plays Dr. Scratch and Sniff, and he plays Pinky from Animaniacs. He's also been in, again, so many other Disney movies in regards to, in the 2 Cinderella sequels that they did, he plays Jacques in that. He's also, I think, Jacques in the Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep game. He's in so many other Disney movies where he plays just like all these other characters. If I remember correctly, he also played Prince Eric in Little Mermaid 2, Return to the Sea. He played Prince Eric in that. He's been in a lot of other Disney movies as either side characters or as the sidekick or other just like Warner Brother animated stuff as well. Just all over the place for different characters, and he's great. He can do like the high-pitched voices. He is also, as far as I'm aware, I really like Rob Paulsen because he's like, it's like I can do with him like what I do a lot with like anime voice actors, like the English anime voice actors. So it's like, oh, I know that voice. When I'm listening to like different anime, I'm like, oh, yep, I know that voice. I know exactly who that is. Or, oh, yeah, I know exactly who that is. I can kind of do the same thing with him as well, with Rob Paulsen as well. Along with a few others. The other thing that I was going to say is that Rob Paulsen also holds kind of the, he was in the original Ninja Turtles animated series that they had way back in the 80s. He was in that as Raphael. And then several years ago, they had done a computer animated version of Ninja Turtles, which I very much liked that one. There's another new version of Ninja Turtles out now, which looks kind of interesting, but this came out before that one. And I really like that one, and he plays Donatello in that, so he's played 2 of the Ninja Turtles, which is very fun. But, so there's like a lot of stuff that goes with that. I really like Rob Paulsen. There's also, so many other characters, of course, in the course of this, in Lilo and Stitch, and of course, this, Stitch the movie leads into the series itself, which I will talk about in the next Disney episode. In regards to the review, that will be, in that one, I will talk about Stitch the series, Leroy and Stitch, which kind of ends out the series, and then there is Stitch the series, which takes place after Leroy and Stitch, and Lilo is not in it, and I will talk about that. And then there's Stitch, and I think it's Ai, or something like that, is the next series after that for Stitch to be in for the Lilo and Stitch franchise, and I'll talk about those. The comment I wanted to make also on this is, as far as I'm aware, I don't think there's any Lilo and Stitch references in Once Upon a Time. I mean, we're working our way through Once Upon a Time still, but as far as I'm aware, there are no Lilo and Stitch references in Once Upon a Time, as far as I'm aware, because they don't deal with aliens in Once Upon a Time. There's no point in Once Upon a Time where, like, you know, like Mr. Gold like says, I need to talk to my alien friend Jumba. I have these experiments I need to talk to him about. I'm like, I want to see that episode. If they did that, that would be amazing. I would have loved it if they did like a Lilo and Stitch episode. That would have been great. Um, or even just have like one of the because in Once Upon a Time, Henry, who is Emma Swan's son, and she's also the son of the mayor Regina, who's also the evil queen. Just go back and rewatch some of the other Disney movie things I talked about. Henry comes up with different names for the different plans that they do. There's like Operation Cobra and Operation Mongoose and Operation something else that they do at various points in time. And I think it would have been hilarious if like he just named one of the operations like Operation Stitch or something like that, or Operation Ohana. Because in all honesty, kind of one of the lessons of Once Upon a Time is Ohana, is family. You know, Ohana means family. Family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten, and that's basically kind of one of the lessons that comes with Once Upon a Time itself. Um, I highly doubt I'll be the only one to ever point that out, but if I am, then that's awesome. But if I'm not, I highly doubt it. But I just love that concept, and I would love it if they'd somehow pulled that out of the bag somewhere in Once Upon a Time. That would have been great. Or even if we just saw like a Stitch stuffed animal somewhere in one of the shows, that would have been great. Or like just like I don't know, like one of the villains like makes something that looks like Stitch and it runs around and terrorizes Storybrooke or something for a little while, and then they make it their friend and then like sticks around with Henry. That would have been funny. That would have been great. But we don't have that, so that's what we have for this one. After the next Lilo and Stitch movie, then I think the next movie is Treasure Planet, and then I think it's Brother Bear. Treasure Planet doesn't really have anything outside of Treasure Planet to talk about. And Brother Bear has the sequel, Brother Bear 2, but I'll be able to keep that one in the same video where I talk about the original. And then after that, I think after that it's, I want to say Bolt is after that. But I don't remember off the top of my head, but we'll see how those space out. So that's what I have for this video. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Just remember what Ohana is. That's kind of the lesson from Lilo and Stitch. So I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.
Ohana means family. Family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten.